Welcome to Communicating with Spirited Kids. This is the first of a three-part series that we'll be doing by webinar, and I'm very, very glad to see you guys coming. I'm going to cover first just a couple of logistics while we're gathering all of our friends together. You are on listening mode, which means you're muted, and we are recording the session, but you're not going to be recorded. And that's one reason we're communicating just with the chat, window. So when we come to the Q&A, there's a little balloon, a little like speech bubble at the bottom of your screen, and that's where you can communicate with us when it comes to the Q&A time. Kirsten Enriquez, you'll see her listed as a participant. She's our co-host. She's my business partner. If you have any technical issues or need any help, send a private chat to her and she will help you out. Awesome. Well, if you're here, you probably have someone you identify as a spirited kid. And those are the people that I really, really love to work with. I know especially at this time in our history, we're having a very close relationship with everyone in our family, and that is wonderful, and it can also be really challenging. My name is Rebecca Freeling. I'm a family coach with Wits End Parenting, and I've worked with highly spirited, strong-willed kids for over 20 years. I started off as a teacher. I've done some foster parenting along the way and have really developed a love for kids who really need to be in control, really have good ideas, and I want to help parents and teachers who have those kinds of kids also to make the most of that relationship, which can be very rewarding. So this series is an overview of some of the key things that we need to understand and do when we're communicating with strong-willed kids. We have 3 videos, and this first webinar is called Taking the Fight Out of It. So it's about how to not fight with kids who want to fight. The second webinar is going to be how to get them to hear you. And then the third webinar is going to be how to listen so that they feel heard. This is not a webinar about solving some of the common but really stressful behavior problems like oppositional behavior or the hour-long meltdowns. I cover those in depth in my individual coaching programs, and then we're also going to be putting together some other videos that are going to really delve down into some of those things. This is actually more about your behavior than your child's this time, about the communication and how you present yourself and how you present your attitude to your child can really have an influence on their behavior. But it's not the ultimate solution to some of the sort of behavior problems that a lot of people come to me with. Today's webinar is going to cover, oh shoot, hold on. Sorry, I blew it. Okay. Okay, hold on. Okay, today's webinar is going to cover what the spirited temperament is, how to take the fight out of it, and we're also going to have a question and answer session. And when we do, so we want to be paying attention to these temperament traits that kids have and how to reduce the tendency to reply to them in a way that continues the fight or increases the fight when what they want to do is sort of control that communication. When we get to the Q&A, I'm going to be answering your questions with an intention to help everyone on the call. And so we're not going to be able to really drill down into your particular issue in detail. And I know this can be very frustrating. But we are offering a discount on the follow-up sessions so we can work on your particular situation. Okay, let's talk about temperament. So spirited kids usually have some temperament traits in common. They usually have a low frustration tolerance. If it's hard, I don't want to do it. They're usually low in adaptability. Change is bad in their opinion. Even making a transition from doing something fun to doing something else fun can be difficult because it wasn't their idea to make that transition and they don't like the change. So sometimes just the change in itself can create a problem. They're usually highly sensitive. This is physically and emotionally. They may be very sensitive to touch, but they're also very sensitive to your tone of voice. They're very sensitive to feeling like if they're being shamed, that's a very, very painful thing to them. If they think they're being laughed at, that's a very painful thing to them. You could be in another room of the house and laughing, and sometimes they think you're laughing at them and they get all mad. Why are you laughing at me? That's an emotional sensitivity that we really have to pay attention to and be sensitive to ourselves. These kids are more active than other kids. They just can't seem to sit still. They're more intense. They have intense love and they have intense hate. And they have intense meltdowns and emotional expressions. So the tantrums can be an hour long. The meltdowns can, throw the whole day out of whack for everybody. These kids also have a lower need to please adults than other kids do. Some kids, if you tell them, oh, it hurts my feelings when you say that, they'll actually stop saying things like, I hate you, you're stupid. But spirited kids are not motivated by that. They're motivated by their need for control. They don't want to be good. They want to be strong. So when I say they don't want to be good, it doesn't mean they want to be bad. They're not trying to hurt you. They just want control. And that's because that's so important to them. We really need to consider it when we're thinking about, okay, how do we communicate with these kids? How do we discipline these kids? How do we organize their day? These are things that we have to take into account. And all of these things listed here, these are temperament traits. None of these are character flaws. And if that can become your mantra, it's going to help you work with some of the principles of positivity that we all really want to work with. Okay, so what happens when you, as a parent, have a child who's very oppositional and you oppose their opposition? You get a fight. And when you get a fight with a spirited kid, it's really hard to win it. You're not going to come out on top when you're fighting against somebody who has more energy, more time on their hands, more brain cells that are currently active than you do. And so I could say, Cheetah, oh, this is my friend Cheetah. Cheetah, say hi to our new friends. Hi. Oh, we see some old friends out there. Hello, friends. So if I say to Cheetah, Cheetah, please get your backpack. I don't want to. I don't need it today. I have lots of things I could say in response to that, right? Let's do something fun together tonight. No, you're stupid. Okay, now I feel great. Okay, I took a positive discipline class. I know I need to offer you a choice. Would you like the red one or the green one? I want the blue one. Right? None of these were offered. Now if I come back at him with, you do need your backpack today. Mrs. Myers said that you had your homework. No, she didn't. She told the class, right, we can go back and forth and back and forth. Now we have a fight. This fight is hard for me as an adult. For Cheetah, it's as easy as pie. I had a 11-year-old girl that I was working with whose mother was telling me about these fights they'd have where, you know, the fight would last for like an hour and then the mom was exhausted. And she's like, it takes me 2 days to recover from these things. It's just so, she's so intense. And then when I was talking to the child about trying to make an agreement with the mom, I said, well, how are you going to get her to agree to that? She's like, oh, I'm going to have a long, boring fight with her. So for the kid, it was like almost a non-event. It was like, oh, such a pain. I'm going to have this boring fight. And the mom was traumatized, right? So we need to get ourselves out of that situation. And the way we're going to do that is by paying attention to the words we're using. Are we sharing? Yes. All right. we don't want to use fighting words. This was a cartoon that was active in my childhood, and sometimes I would hear my mom say, "Them's fighting words." So this always comes up when I think about the fighting. So this is really one of the key points about communicating with spirited kids. And we want to choose our words. So here's what that means. When your child says, I don't want to, okay, say we're going to go to the park. We think we're explaining. We think we're, quote, helping them understand why we have to do this thing. No, I don't want to. Oh, well, we have to go out, so we're going to go to the park. I don't want to go to the park. Why are we going to the park? Well, it's important to go outside every day, but I don't want to go outside every day. Well, we need to go outside. I know you don't want to do it, and I know it's frustrating for you, but we have to go outside so we get vitamin D on our skin and our brain is healthy. I don't want my brain to be healthy. We could go on like this for 20 minutes, and then we're still not at the park, right? Say I gave Cheetah and his sister Bunny both a pancake and I put syrup on them. Cheetah says, Bunny got more syrup than I did. And I say, no, she didn't. Yes, she did. No, she didn't. Yes, she did. No, she didn't. I measured it. No, you didn't. Yes, I did. We could go on for, they've got tons of energy, right? They're never going to stop. Then there's just good old fashioned, good morning, Cheetah. I hate you. Now you're just angry, but you don't really hate me. That's too strong a word. Why don't you just say, I don't feel like talking to you. No, I hate you, and you're a bad mom. Well, now I know you don't really think that. Don't keep going on like that, because they're just going to have to get more and more and more insulting, right? They can take these ad infinitum. At the best, these responses are pointless. You just end up back and forth. But at worst, you are teaching the child how to negotiate in a way that's not true negotiation. And you're getting yourself worked up to a place where you're going to start yelling. And that's not where you want to get to, which takes us to our next one, be a fern. We want to talk in a positive, gentle, neutral tone. And it's really hard to do that when your frustration level is high. So some of the things that you need to do to keep your frustration level as low as possible is, first of all, don't repeat yourself. If I tell you to do something, I tell it to you once. And I make sure that I'm right up next to you. I'm going to be face to face with you. Cheetah, please get your backpack. Now I know Cheetah heard me. So me saying it 6 extra times isn't somehow going to make it go in a way that it hadn't gone in before, right? So that's one piece of the puzzle, is figuring out how to say something one time and then following up with something other than repeating yourself. Because when you repeat yourself time after time after time, you naturally start to get really tense and yell, or just like It's your backpack. That's the not yelling. Kid will still tell you that you're yelling at them. Now I know you're all on mute, but I heard like 20 of you say, but how do you get them to do it? That's another webinar. And like I said, a nice follow-up session is going to help sort of nail some of those down. So if that's a huge question in your mind, I can definitely help you with that. Remember, this is another point about how to have this natural, gentle tone. Remember that you are a teacher. You are teaching your child. You taught your child how to walk. You didn't teach them how to walk by holding them by their arms and saying, okay, now lift your heel up off the ground. Yeah, okay, now lift the toe. No, they learned how to walk by watching you walk. They learned how to talk by listening to you talk. They learned how to cuss by hearing you cuss. They're learning all of these communication techniques from you. And so if you can keep that in mind, it can also pull you out of the situation a little bit. Okay, as I'm responding to Cheetah in this moment, I'm teaching Cheetah how to respond to people who are not listening. And so you want to take the sarcasm out of your voice. You want to be not snarky. You know, you don't want to say things like, well, oh, so I guess you know everything now. Or even just like, oh my God, how many times? All of that communicates things to your child that you really don't want to communicate. And most importantly, be kind. Think of these sweet little gentle ferns. You know, when we go into the forest where these redwood trees are and there's all these ferns, just think of that feeling. Like, oh yeah, I can be that kind and that supportive and that loving to my child many moments of the day. I'm not going to say you have to be perfect all the time because that's not realistic. But when you're trying to decide how to respond to your child, if you keep these images in mind, it's going to help you get there. And speaking of redwoods, silence. Especially if your child is used to hearing your voice a lot, like you do a lot of explaining, you do a lot of convincing, you think things like, oh, how many times do I have to tell him that this is the way it is before he'll understand that this is the way it is? If you stop talking, it makes a huge impact. I'm working currently now, I'm on the 3rd week of a 6-week program with this family who has a 4-year-old boy who has these big tantrums. They're not the kind of tantrums where he just like loses consciousness, right? He's standing there yelling at his parents and just, you know, saying whatever comes to his mind. And we were sort of going through strategies that they could use to deal with these tantrums. And one of them is just being silent. And the dad said, oh, we do that. I just stand there and glare at him. And eventually he stops. And I said, okay, I like the standing there not saying something, but let's take the glaring out of it, right? If you push against a redwood tree, what does it do? Oh, it just continues to be this beautiful tree that's so strong and so immovable, but means you no harm. That's the kind of strength we want to give our children to be able to support them, especially when they're having a difficult time, especially when we are telling them no, which is an extremely difficult thing for them to hear. I want a popsicle. No, you can't have a popsicle right now. You know, well, now I'm gonna have this big fit. And when we're really able to be silent and be able to focus on what we want to provide for them, which is this loving scaffold, then we're able to do this communication of, I love you, I approve of you, I think you're awesome, you have great ideas, and we can have a popsicle after lunch. Hold on, I'm getting a message here. Right. Thank you. Okay, so these are the three main things I want you to be able to take away from this first webinar. All right, we want to take out the fighting words. We want to be using a neutral and gentle tone. And we want to really use silence as much as possible. That means walking away, deep breathing ourselves. And I want to reiterate, these three things alone are not going to get shoes on when shoes don't want to go on necessarily. When you start doing things like this, it does influence your child's behavior, but it's not the whole answer. We need to have a discipline system in place. The child needs to be making meaningful contributions to the family. There needs to be an outlet for the child's need for control. But really central to everything is this way of communicating and making sure that what we're offering our children is, an open heart, open mind. We're going to listen to what their ideas are, if the ideas are respectfully spoken. And we're going to invite them into a relationship where there doesn't have to be this constant fighting. But somebody in that communication pattern has to be the first person to change it. And of course, the first person to change it isn't going to be your child. It has to be you. And so that's what I meant when I said we were going to be talking about your behavior. So I would like to open this up now to your questions. And you see your chat is down there at the bottom of the screen. It's a little speech bubble. If you open that up and just type your question in, if you could tell me how old your child is, that'll be helpful. Hi, Cheetah. It's Cheetah. Hello. Oh my gosh, Cheetah's twin is here. Nice to see you guys. And Kirsten is going to be helping me moderate the questions. If there are too many questions to answer in this episode, she's going to help me kind of group them by topic. And I'm going to open up my chat window here. Okay, I'm going to start with a question that I got from one of the parents that I was talking to about this webinar, but she said she couldn't make it. And so since we're recording it, I said, okay, well, that's okay, I'll answer your question. And her question was about the silence. And if the child, we were specifically talking about whining and how if the child is whining like, oh, but I want it, how come I can't have it? She's like, how do I get this child to understand that that's not good communication? And so the answer to that, of course, is don't communicate. So when Cheetah is whining, oh, but I want it. A way to use silence to manage that is just to turn away. Now, it's nice to explain that first to Cheetah, to let Cheetah know. When you whine, when you use your weak voice and not your strong voice, I'm not going to hear you. I'm going to hear you when you use your strong voice. my strong voice. Oh, no, 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 no. Okay, now I'm not going to listen. And my turning away, there's a couple different ways that you can turn away, right? I could turn away like this. Talk to the hand, right? Which is profoundly disrespectful and is exactly the kind of communication that we're trying to avoid. You wouldn't want Cheetah talking to you in that voice. So we're not going to use that voice with him. So when I turn away, it's just simply as if nobody was talking to me. And now I have to do something. I have to do something with my thoughts, because if I don't, and Cheetah keeps on, oh, come on, you do me, I want one, then I'm going to start to go a little bit nuts. Okay, and I might not be able to maintain this strong silence. So some strategies that I used was I used to do the 4s times tables. I got really, really good at the 4s times tables because when I first started doing it, they were hard for me. So I had to really think. So we want to do something that's making you think. Or if you have an inspirational poem that you can say to yourself, or a Bible verse that's meaningful to you to repeat. You want to give yourself some kind of mantra, just to, remember those redwood trees and just see yourself, okay, I'm a redwood tree. I have a family who's working with this concept now, and she's a big rock. She just imagines herself being this big rock, and that's how she's maintaining, that silence for her. I'd be interested to, hear from you guys if you have been able to have some success with walking away or being silent. Like, what has worked for you to be able to do that? Why don't you, Kirsten, go ahead and read that question for me.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so I have someone who's asking, their child is 8, and everything we request to do, like pick up your plate, or brush your teeth first thing in the morning, we always get, or why do I have to do that? And how do we overcome the why without repeating why it needs to happen? And also, even if we walk away, he follows us till we agree or respond. I hope everybody, if people are having trouble hearing that, just text and Rebecca will repeat that.
Okay. Okay, that's a good 3-parter. My first question to you is, has your child ever heard you say, ah? Probably. They learned this from us. One piece of it, and again, this isn't going to get the plate taken over to the sink, but be on guard for when you're going, ugh, to your child, or even to your partner. How we deal with our frustrations educates them on how to deal with their frustrations. How we deal with doing things we don't want to do educates them on how to deal with things they don't want to do. If every time I have to wash the dishes, I go in and I go, oh, how many bowls do we have? I'm going to throw away everything. We're just going to use paper. Like, how much do they hear us complaining about these little things we have to do that are so boring? I mean, what is more boring than carrying your plate to the sink? Come on. Who wants to do that? Nobody. So one piece of it that's sort of part of this underlying foundation is how we talk about doing these little tasks. Okay, why do I have to do it? You've explained it. Your child is 8. An 8-year-old has the cognitive capacity to remember why he has to take his plate to the sink. So you don't have to explain it. You're done explaining it. You never have to explain it again. And the next time, so when he asks, why do I have to do it? You don't have to answer. This is really, really hard, right? Easy for me to say here, right? She is a stuffed animal. I can say no all day. They're like, oh, you're a stuffed animal. Oh, no. Oh, sorry. He thinks it's real. Okay. It's easy to think about. The reason it's hard to do, I think there's 2 reasons. One is you're just in a bad habit. Okay. That's not easy. It's just like a simple explanation. It's a bad habit. But the second reason I think that it's hard to resist is because you want to be an educator. You want your child to know why they have to do things. We don't want to just be tyrants who are making commands and then the kids just have to obey. We don't want to be that kind of parent. And so the mindset is, oh, well, if he doesn't understand why he has to take his plate over, then I really want him to understand it so I'm not a tyrant. But taking your plate to the sink isn't as complex as explaining, for instance, why we can't go to the park. Okay, why can't we go to the park anymore? That's something you may need to explain several times in several different ways with the help of a YouTube video or 2, because that's a complex answer. Why do I have to take my bowl to the sink? Especially for an 8-year-old, we don't need to explain why, because it's not complex. And so let yourself be like, okay, yeah, I am a teacher. I am educating him about the way things need to be done and the attitude with which we want to do these things. Okay, you walk away and he follows you until you respond or he gets what you want. This is where you need a concrete, simple discipline system so that you have a response that's still strong, still silent, and doesn't end up in a fight. Now, if I say, and there's many ways to do that, which I'm not covering here, okay, but I've got Cheetah here. Okay, please take your bowl to the sink. I see you're not taking your bowl to the sink. Consequence, whatever you've got, whatever we've developed there, that's where that goes. Then you're done. That's where you can give a response. Okay, he follows us until we give a response. Here's your response, your consequence. And now I'm done with this event. Cheetah has chosen whatever it is, taking something away, it's a timeout, it's a point, it's a blah, 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 whatever. But that's what's missing. Hold on, this is my, can people hear me? Kirsten, can you hear me? Okay. But that discipline system is part of what's needed in there so that you don't get in that trap. What else has come up for people as we're talking about fighting words and being silent and using a neutral tone? What are the challenges that you're having with that? Yes, wonderful. Is silence mean? How do we do that in a way It isn't just like you're ignoring them and not hearing them in the punitive sense. This is, yes, you're right. This is different than the silent treatment, right? If you can sometimes set it up with them beforehand. Specifically with things like whining, you can say, here's what I'm going to do. I want to be using strong voices in our house. And so here's what we're going to do when you whine. And I'm going to maybe give you a reminder to use your strong voice. And then I'm going to just not hear you. And then when you use your strong voice, I will hear you again. So then you set it up. Now, in the moment when you need to do it, your silence, you're asking this question because you have experienced an icy silence. We want a warm silence, right? We want the kind of silence that is these beautiful redwood trees. When you're ignoring your child and you take that step immediately before you're exasperated, you still have the mental energy to call these images to mind, to be presenting a strong self that really allows you to connect with them without verbal communication. If there's a time when you need to walk away from them, which you haven't set up beforehand, it's just, oh, okay, you're calling me a mean mommy and telling me all these bad things, and I'm just going to walk away. As long as you do it in a gentle sort of redwood tree way, you're not being mean. Now, your child might say, you're being mean to me. You don't love me. You hate me. That's why you're not talking to me. That's your child trying to take back control of that communication. What you're feeling at your core, which is love and support for your child, that's under all of the frustration and all of the ickiness and all of the, oh my God, why did I get a kid like this? Under all of that really is this deep, still love. That's what you want to tap into to bring out. And you'll know when that's what you're giving. Okay, there we go. Okay, let's see.
Hey, Rebecca.
Yo.
Let me, you have a chat that was addressed to everyone.
Great.
And I want to read one that came in before then, okay?
Oh,
kind of
okay.
still on the silence.
Sure.
And that is, silence sometimes is met with our 4-year-old daughter's attempts to yell louder and gets us to talk. What next?
You have to outlast her. When that's the easy answer. I have about 4 follow-up questions that I could ask, right? But she's trying to get you to do this thing. Children are very, very effective because they find the thing that's going to make you reply, the word that's really going to get in there. Some kids who have been to therapy, by the time they're 10 or 11, they've been to a lot of therapy. They can say things in these tantrums. I don't feel safe. I feel like you're abusing me. That can really trigger you into going like, oh, dang, I don't want you to feel safe. I don't want you to feel like I don't love you. I don't want you to feel like I hate you. And they're very, very good at sort of pulling us back into that. If you can, and if you can outlast her, she will learn that it's not effective. Now, how do you outlast somebody who's screaming in your face? go into another room. You might need to, we talk about in the programs I do, we talk about the cool down room. She may need to go into her cool down room. You may need to go into your cool down room. It's okay to separate yourself from somebody who's violating your boundaries, who's violating your personal space. She needs to know that. She needs to know if somebody is continually invading her personal space, she needs to separate from that person. And the way she's going to learn that is by you teaching it to her. And so the answer lies somewhere around the road of how can you not respond? And she can go on. She can go on and on and on and on and on. But if you can, for, you know, sometimes I've seen a really big shift, especially since she's so young. You can see a really big shift in like 3 days. If you just really, like, every adult in the house just buckled down and was like, okay, we're not going to respond. Let's take bets on how long this is going to last. Like, do something to make it so you can, you know, keep your cool while this is going on.
Okay, Rebecca.
Mm-hmm.
I want to just kind of, we've got a little under 20 minutes, and I think we have about 3 questions left, but why don't you scroll up and answer Melanie?
Got it.
Who's put her chat into everyone, and answer that, and then the others are at the end.
Okay. Oh, got it. Okay, cool beans. Okay, I have an 11-year-old boy and twin girls, 7, one of which is our most spirited child, mega screaming tantrums, and volatile love-hate reactions, 5 to 7 days a week, and we are wiped. Oh, I'll bet you are. In recent months, my other twin is getting bigger and bigger reactions. And if you have thoughts about the contagion, good word, or ways I can talk to my less sensitive twin, I'm guessing she's looking for attention because one twin requires so much. But I need language to help my other kids to understand what is going on and how we can all try to manage. I find myself trying to manipulate my son's behavior constantly so as not to cause a big reaction in her. And that feels awful to all of us. It's not really his fault that she overreacts. Okay, so the boy is 11. Okay, and the twin girls are 7. Got it. All right, good question. So you're in a place that a lot of parents get to where it feels like, oh, we're walking on eggshells, because it's hard to manage these, you know, these big swings. I love you. I love my little sisters. I hate my little sisters. I love my family. I hate my family. It's hard to manage those. Gosh, especially in the situation we are now, where we're all sort of locked down together. As far as explaining it to the girls, I think one thing that you want to be communicating to them is how they can create a space for themselves inside this family. Everybody in the family has roles. So I think where we lost each other was when I was talking about everybody in the family having roles. And this is another one of those sort of foundational things of like, what's everybody's role in the family? Clearly your 11-year-old son has a certain role, right? Which has everybody walking on eggshells. Even as we're trying to teach him other ways of communicating, you can build the girls up into roles that they have in the family. Like, and I'm always on these housework. Everybody's doing housework. Everybody's really pulling their weight in the family and doing work together. The more that happens, the more people really naturally fall into this feeling of we're all a group, we all matter here. And so that's one road I would take you down, is okay, what are they, what's everybody contributing? So that it's not just this, we're all trying to do our best while 11-year-old is always exploding. Another one is to be able to hold boundaries with the 11-year-old and let the twins really see that happening in a consistent way. And that may mean introducing or firming up some sort of consequence system, some kind of response that isn't, that isn't just taking him out of a situation or taking him into a punitive situation. And you can also really work with, how much time? What's our time? Because I'm kind of going to this, and I know I need to do a, turn off your speaker. We need to do a sibling communication because part of teaching siblings to communicate with each other is really just getting them to have a conversation that they know how to have because they learned it in preschool, and really making sure that they have it. So it's not just you always having to jump in and rescue the younger kids, but really teaching them how to create space for themselves, how to speak what they need, but then also requiring that the 11-year-old respond to that. And the contagion that you speak of, that's exactly what we were talking about. If one person starts speaking in a mean way, then it really is easy for other people to, to kind of continue that. I have a little chart. If you want this, let's see, what's the best way? Why don't you email me if you want this chart? It's called Friendly Unfriendly. And all it is, and you can even just make one. It's got a line down the middle. On one side, it has a happy face, and on the other side, it has kind of a sad face. And you use one chart for the whole family. We're not dividing it up by kids or anything. There's no rewards. There's no consequences, punishments attached to it at all. It's just a tracking device, and it's very informative. So here's the friendly, here's the unfriendly. Okay, every time I think of it, I'm going to put a mark up there. If I hear somebody say something friendly, I'm going to put a mark in the friendly. If I hear somebody say something unfriendly, I'm going to put a mark in the unfriendly. And kids' reactions to this is very interesting, because sometimes just seeing that up there makes them want to get more in the friendly. That's like, so we're sort of going to go with the extreme reactions. For some people, it solves the problem for a little while. Because the kid's like, no, we want more friendlies, we want more friendlies. On the other end of the spectrum, somebody will just take it and just be like, this is stupid, I can't believe I have to do this thing, right? That's another reaction. Both of those and everything in between is informative. There's one thing we're looking at, that's what happened at your house. What we're looking for is, how is your child thinking about this speech? How is your child thinking about their role in this? And what you learn from doing that helps give us the next step. And so that's definitely something that you can try. I know that's just the beginning of an answer, but I hope it sort of moves you into a thinking space that will help you. Here's another one. Silence. Okay, here's another question. He is now 2.5 years old. How do we make him understand to share? So 2.5-year-old, 2.5 years old, by nature, don't share. That's what they're learning. It's like, how do you teach a 1-year-old to walk? Like, that's what they're learning. To share for a 2.5-year-old is a very difficult thing because everything's mine, until I'm done with it, and then it's yours, but then it's mine again because now I want it because you have it. That's kind of their thing. In terms of the communication, you're not going to be able to you're not going to be able to explain it. You're going to have to show them and then also require it. Now, when we're talking 2.5-year-old, if you say spirited 2.5-year-old, a lot of times we're talking about somebody who cognitively is operating at around a 3.5 or 4-year-old level. Okay, that's different than a sort of typical 2-year-old mine. But still, the answer lies in modeling and requiring it. If you're playing with somebody and somebody wants a turn, that's when we start to go into the sibling communication. Okay, if we're trying to communicate with siblings, we need to go through this process. I want the red one. I'm not done with it. When are you going to have it? Okay, you can have it for 5 minutes. Okay, then I can have it for 5 minutes. And that, tediously going through that. That's what they do in preschools, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times a week, going through that, teaching them how to do this communication. So stay tuned. We will do a sibling, a webinar on siblings. I know that's really coming up as we're all locked in together. Okay. All right. I think, is this, all right. Okay. I think we have time for one more, and I think it's here. What to do? There we go. What to do with a child whose frustrations manifest physically. We have an 8-year-old who instigates hitting fights with her brother. This is where we talk about a cool down room. This is, Kirsten, did we post that webinar? The cool down room? Not too long ago, I did a webinar, or webinar on when your child gets really, really angry.
Right, and that's on our YouTube channel.
Okay.
And so yeah, I don't know how much the cool down room is covered there, but there's definitely, that is relevant, and that's a resource for that.
Okay, I'm going to send you to that video. It's on YouTube. Look up Wits End Parenting. I think it was called What to Do When Your Child Gets Really Angry. Because that's a whole, when we're talking about the physical stuff, we've got this whole other thing going on, right? Because you can't just say to brother, oh, just ignore her. No, that's not what we do when people hit us. We don't ignore them. We really require them to be in a different space. And then that opens up a whole can of worms. And I'm glad that question came up, because it really illustrates how, when you're reading parenting books and they tell you, look, all you have to do is just be kind and be positive and be calm, and your children's behavior problems will melt away. Sorry, that's not true. It's just not. We want to start with being calm and being positive to neutral, and having a nice demeanor, but then we have to follow it up with, If you don't, this is what's going to happen. If you do, this is what's going to happen. This is how we're going to talk to each other in this house. And here's what happens if we go off that path. And so what we do when we coach people through a program is we really look at all of these aspects. And often people come to me with just these kinds of issues where it's like, well, you know, she won't listen. She won't share. She, you know, yells all the time. You know, she'll never do the things we tell her to do. And part of the solution is in the way you communicate, but another part of the solution is in the way you structure things in terms of discipline, in terms of, you know, housework sharing. And those are things that are really dealt with very well in the individual coaching and, you know, in really working with, okay, here's this individual problem with this configuration of human beings that doesn't exist anywhere else on the planet except in your house. I want to thank you guys so much for joining us today. I hope that this reminded you or helped you sort of feel a little more centered in like, okay, how to communicate that deep love and caring that you really have for your child in a way that your child can receive it. Remember to stop fights by not fighting. Use the tone of your voice and using your silence. These are really, really powerful tools. And call me or email me if you'd like some customized help with your particular situation. We've added some programming to be more targeted in developing these communication skills and in the strong-willed behavior and in emotional regulation. We're now measuring where you are with these skills. We're sort of developing some self-assessments you can do to just kind of keep yourself on track, because that tends to be one of the most difficult things for parents, is just like keeping yourself on track with, okay, things are out of control. Okay, where are my basics? We want to really, really be teaching those basics. We have individual sessions, 6 to 12 week custom programs, and we're working now with a 20% discount so that we can make it a little bit easier because things just got really, really hard for everybody. So stay tuned for our second webinar, which is how to get them to hear you. And then the third one, how to listen so they feel heard. The how to get them to hear you is May 16th at 11:30 Pacific time. If you may be on my mailing list, which is how you got this. If somebody shared this with you and you're not on my mailing list, send us an email or go to our website. And I invite you to go to my YouTube page. We also have a Facebook page, Wits End Parenting US, that I'm trying to sort of get some activity on so you can connect with other parents who aren't going to just tell you to, you know, talk with a gentle voice and everything will be fine. And share this with your friends. If you know somebody who's having similar difficulties, you know, let them know about the other webinar. And again, email me if you'd like to have a private follow-up session to answer your questions more specifically. I wish you guys the very best. It's so nice to see you and to see some old friends again. Cheetah, we have to say bye now. Okay, bye-bye. We'll see you guys next time.